county to say what? Enough is enough.
People say that Ithaca is 10 square miles surrounded by reality. They say it's a liberal utopia. But for people of color, that isn't the case.
For people of color, it has never felt safe for us. And as this is just one example of what so many of us in Ithaca experience.
When the recent tragedy in Florida happened, the focus from the alt-right moved from us to the young activists in Florida advocating for the safety necessary and long overdue gun control measures.
Although we are sure this is terrifying for them, it was heartening to see other young people step out of their comfort zone and work to make change locally and nationally.
Here in Ithaca, we are proud to say we persisted despite the local and national threats to our school.
It took young people raising their voices to make real changes.
After Breitbart and then Fox News picked up the story about our students' activism, all 5 young people began receiving pointed and very specific death threats. For whatever reason, I was the parent that the extremist right targeted. The threats usually began with me with detailed descriptions of violence traditionally associated with violence against women and culminated with my death, usually by shooting. The threats to all of us made the fight for common sense gun control transform from a firmly held political conviction to a more real and personal issue for me. To the politicians in the pocket of the NRA, we will no longer tolerate you putting the interests of your campaign coffers over the interests of the people you claim to represent. Well, I believe we're here today in no small part because we have not been listening to each other enough. Really listening. And without listening, there can be no unity, and without unity, we won't win. We need to listen and talk to people who own guns and not lump them all in one category. The other day I was in line at the grocery store and I struck up a conversation, as I'm apt to do despite my children's horror. He said, I live right outside of Ithaca so I can hunt. My grandfather hunted, I hunt, and my father hunted with me. And I'm terrified that someone's gonna walk into my child's school and do something crazy with a gun they should have never been allowed to own in the first place. He said, but I'm a part of the NRA and I don't know what to do. The NRA clearly isn't interested in listening or adjusting their position, but so many of their members are. We have to remember, Ithaca is 10 square miles surrounded by human beings who are our neighbors who love their children as much as we do. The hunters I know are loving mothers, fathers, grandmothers who I am convinced will enlist in our fight for desperately needed gun control if we listen to them and include their history and their culture in this conversation. The Black community has been saying for years that gun violence is a huge problem. Black children are murdered with a gun at nearly 10 times the rate of white children. I have to ask, why are people like me taking to the streets now? I feel personally and deeply ashamed I didn't take to the streets and cry out in protest as our Black children lost their lives. It's time for listening and it's time for unity. States requiring background checks on all handgun sales see 47% fewer women shot by intimate partners than states that do not have this requirement. That is almost half by one simple background check. We need representatives who don't believe the fight for our safety begins and ends with desperately needed gun control legislation. Trump and his minions like Tom Reed are counting on an angry and divided electorate. Let's not give it to them.
I got good news for you though. The great news is that 569 Black women are running for office in 2018.
Yes to common sense gun control. Yes to holding our politicians accountable. Yes, if we don't listen, let's vote them out of office. But yes also to listening, fighting for all, and yes to doing better at unifying all Americans. If we can unite, we can win. And this is a fight none of us can afford to lose. Listen, unify, enough is enough.